people should sort of play with the question of
What would
is
change if somebody was a different gender or something?
yeah, I mean, would anything
Yeah.
change? Because I mean, I have some friends that are transgender, and when I was exposed to the first transgender person that I grew close to, I was thinking, I wonder what it is really. Because when you look at characters, what is it that makes a person a person? Because it's not their body, it's not their physical shell. I mean, that's part of the way they express themselves, and
I think
it's
that's more of how uh more of reflection of for us, not really as a reflection of themselves exactly.
well, yeah, but I mean, a person's body is in a way the way that they present themselves to the world, and so when a person starts to transition, of course, they may adopt a different sort of presentation. They may keep the same presentation. It's really up to them what their gender expression is, and of course we
Yeah.
have a lot of gender expression imposed upon us by gender roles in this society. I've
Yeah.
done a lot of reading on this. I
Well,
didn't really think
yeah,
about it
yeah.
before that, but it also really makes me think, like, especially about characters, because I know actual people that have that are transitioning or have transitioned, and they've had a lot of different experiences in that, and it's been how others have received them, how others perceive them, how they perceive themselves, and what their own identity is as it relates to or as it doesn't relate to their sex and their gender expression. And so it really is interesting to me to examine that in a character. And I think I mean, you can always play around with the character
Yeah.
because it's just a fictional character. You can change their sex or gender at any time, and you can do that just for fun. You can do that casually, and it's not meant as an attack on anybody that goes through any sort of real transitioning or anything like that. But I think it can be tremendously interesting too if you think about it, even if you're just playing casually with it. What really is it that is the essence of this character? What are the essential qualities of this character? And do they have any tie with that character's sex or gender expression? And I have actually come up with so many interesting ways of thinking through things and contemplating things by examining. It's actually really interesting to look into that.
You gave this more thought than I did because because when I think about such issues, my first opinion is if you don't like who you are, then the answer is change it.
Yeah.
Second of all, which when this was a while ago, but I think you share a link with Chaos Comics, I believe. I think I have that correct.
I think so, yeah.
And when they first got a form, because myself, I've thought what it would be like to be a dude, but I've never wanted or thought I was a dude.
Yeah.
And so I didn't really understand. I didn't phrase it the best way, but anyway, I left a comment, and the author of Chaos Comics actually replied to me, and I read what she or he, I'm not sure, uh, said, and I thought about it, and it just kind of hit me like, if you don't like it, change it. And I'm like, okay, that's answer enough. I still don't really get it, but that's good enough for me.
Yeah.
My second idea that more fits my viewpoint, I think, on a person and their gender identity is, to me, I don't think we would emphasize gender as much if society wasn't based off of it. If
Yeah,
it wasn't
there's
like forced, I like in my personal idea, we would be mentally we should be genderless. Where I mean, granted, our bodies have you know to reproduce. How
yeah.
would you get more humans if you didn't have male and female? But in reality, if we didn't put so much focus on you have to be one thing or the other,
Yeah, yeah, it's very much a black and white situation when in fact that's not the case at all. And now we have the technology where, I mean, people can procreate, even if you distill it down to that sort of simple,
Mm.
very simple, the need to propitiate the species. We can do that with just one person and another donor or something like that. I mean, it's it's a very complicated situation, but I think it's also something that is sometimes both oversimplified and
Yeah,
overcomplicated. So
yeah.
but I
I,
mean, you're
I, I
completely
mean,
right.
I mean, granted, there's more to it, but that's, the whole imposing gender and all that is my personal opinion and
No,
thoughts about it. And
you're
then,
completely right
and
because from day one we have gender roles
yeah.
imposed upon
I
us.
mean, once you're born, you're a girl or you're a boy, and you are treated differently depending on what gender you are.
Mm.
Physically, I mean, and it's, and it's like, and so it's just, I'm not trying to talk down to people who feel one way or the other, regardless of their body's
Yeah,
gender, but it's just like, you like you're a dude who acts more like a girl stereotype.
uh,
So you're a girl. Eventually, you know, you start to think that, well, if I'm not this, then mentally I must be this.
yeah.
So then I need to make this match my body, make my body match
Yeah.
this. Like I
And
don't,
there are some people too that have a tremendous dysphoria with their body, and just they know they are not the
yeah,
sex that they were born, and they just
yeah,
cannot reconcile with that. So they
yeah,
have to
yeah,
change it because it's very distressing to
yeah.
them.
Well,
But
like I said, I'm not
there are
trying to
also
I'm sorry. I'm not trying to talk down to, people like that. It's just, in my own rambling thoughts, I'm like, I wonder if it real if that kind of thing, not saying you're wrong if you feel like that, but if that kind of thing is, I'm like, I think it's really about how much pressure we as a society put on people to be one thing or the other.
yeah,
And
there
I
is.
think that's really what the problem is. It's
I
not
think
these people, I mean, you always have the stereotype that there's something wrong with them, but
yeah,
there's not. It's really, we have our emphasis in the wrong places.
yeah. I think definitely many people are probably very affected by that, and it opened my eyes. See, this also this also kind of makes me think about, well, the Kinsey scale, right?
I
It's basically like a spectrum of sexuality and sexual orientation rather than, gay, bi, straight,
Okay, yeah,
whatever. It basically puts you on a spectrum, on a scale of, the points on the Kinsey scale. It has its problems, but basically it puts you on somewhere on the scale to where it refers to, well, I mainly like this, but maybe I like a little of this in theory, and I don't really care for this.
yeah,
So like it's not those ridiculously pigeonholed terms.
hmm,
It's more like, well, you're here on this spectrum. You're here on this spectrum.
yeah,
You're not. So, but I think that the thought of, well, if you're not this, you're this, thinking is part of the tremendous problem because it is oversimplified and completely dumbed down, especially in popular media, as to what people feel that they are able to be. So I think a lot of people don't understand that there are, you know, it's called the invisible orientation
hmm,
bisexuality because it has virtually no representation except for titillation purposes in much of any popular media. The only bisexuals we ever see are basically lesbians who toy with it so that male viewers that get off on
yeah, yeah,
lesbianism can think they've got a chance. So, I mean, that's the only real representation, such as
yeah,
it is, that it has. But I mean, also, you never hear about like queer, like genderqueer, like
hmm,
queer in various ways. Not, you cannot pin this down. These are people that they don't really conform to gender roles. They may not even consider themselves the same sex one day to another. One day they may feel more like very feminine, very female, and then another day they may feel very masculine and very male, and that's perfectly normal for them. But this society is so highly compartmentalized, and it's got so much of this pigeonholing that every day it's like we're challenged to place ourselves in some sort of neat little, easily tidied and forgotten about classification. And I think that really is damaging to many people
Yeah.
and their self-image. I think you're completely right. Those pressures are tremendous, and people not understanding about being genderqueer or gender fluid,
Mhm.
like I was talking about too. These things these things are very real, and there are many people that feel this way, but that doesn't necessarily mean
Yeah.
that they want to change their physical body. It doesn't necessarily mean that they don't want to change their
Yeah.
physical body, but there's so much about this society and culture that it's very, I don't know, it's very hard on people to be individuals and to embrace any aspect of themselves, especially if they're saying, the way I was born was not okay, and maybe there was a problem with it. It's no different than being born with like a birth defect or like a third nipple or something like that. You're not happy with it, you can't live with it, so you do your best to get rid of it. You
Mhm.
you do what you have to be happy. But there's a lot of pressure not to do that, or a lot of pressure to fit in one category or another. But I mean, it's just like you said from the very beginning. We're stuck in gender roles. You're either a boy or a girl, and you have blue or you have pink,
Yeah.
or you play with the dollies, or you play with the soldiers or whatever, and that's so silly.
Yeah. And I mean, granted, most of us are just, you know, physically just male or female.
Yeah,
That's necessary for more people to be born. But your mental state, or what you consider to be you mentally and as a representation physically, some of that is, what you personally are, but that's also what you've been force fed, by your parents, by teachers, and all that. And then maybe not necessarily force fed, because some people have very encouraging parents, but
yeah,
but you're still taught things, even
yeah.
if your family doesn't mean to teach you some things.
Oh yeah, I mean, there are parts of society and the people popular entertainment, all these things, they may not be intentionally out there to say, yes, this is what we're enforcing, this is what we need. But, speaking as someone who is not part of the mainstream, someone
Hmm.
who is outside the mainstream, in many ways, I see it a lot especially in entertainment. A lot of that is reinforced. A lot of these social ideals, move out at 18, get married when you're in your barely into your 20s, maybe, have 2.5 kids, get some dead end job, die die after working your ass off, and leave a pretty corpse. It's that kind of thing that it's so pervasive that a lot of people who are in it, a lot of people who are in the cycle of these pressures and these influences cannot see it. They cannot recognize that this stuff is so pervasive and it's everywhere. And it's only when you stop and think about it and start to sort of put it under higher scrutiny when you watch, like a movie or a TV series or something, and you think, I kind of resent that kind of promoting
Hmm.
that sort of thing, because whether or not it's aware of it, it's basically saying, yeah, fuck you, you need to be more like this.
Yeah.
And a lot of things do that. A lot of things do that. And you really just, a lot of people will just go, oh, bullshit, you're full of crap, and they won't even think about it. But if you actually give it a chance and look with a critical eye to a lot of things like this, you will see it. You will see it a
Hmm.
lot. And it's really distressing once you do recognize it, because once you've seen it, you can't really close your eyes to it.
Yeah.